Hello again. Welcome to the third module of my strategic planning masterclass. In the last module, we looked at why, in particular, SMEs should conduct strategic planning, what it is, what it can do for your organization, and what it isn't. Today, we've got the fun topic of spectacular failures. These will be failures from both very large corporate organizations as well as startups and SMEs, both very current and recent and from a few decades back. First one I'd like us to look at is Kodak. And I remember when I was at London Business School over 10 years ago, a member of staff was actually a non-exec director for Kodak. And I was chatting with this NED and asking about Kodak's strategy because it was a couple of years into the digital camera takeover. And I was asking, do Kodak have a robust strategy, given the disruption in the market? And the NED felt that they did. They felt that maintaining their cash cow business in film while getting a toehold into digital was the right strategy to take. Of course, it was turned out to be the incorrect strategy. Kodak are no longer with us. They failed to see how smartphones were going to take over the market, both in emerging markets in the likes of Africa and Asia, as well as industrialized markets. So by maintaining their film business and believing there's still a future and not putting all focus into the new technology, they made the incorrect strategic choice. They had all the information, they had the right diagnosis, they didn't make the right choice. Going on to a smaller company, Delivery Extreme, a small delivery company in South Africa, my home country, run by a very close friend of mine. And he's spent 20 years building up this company, very successful, 18, 20 franchises. And, despite him being a friend of mine, he has not conducted strategic planning and has not conducted any diagnosis, therefore has not seen the huge disruptions that have been experienced in the delivery industry, driven by the likes of Uber and Amazon, who come in with great technological platforms and a lot of financial resources. Essentially, he's been blown out of the industry. A few years ago, if he had done some homework, run a diagnosis, he would have seen this and he would have had a few choices open to him. Now he doesn't. So we have a huge failure of diagnosis, and the consequences are pretty dire if you're a small business. Xerox. This is a favorite one of mine. If you don't know about Xerox in the 1970s, they were one of the most innovative companies probably ever that we've ever seen. And Bill Gates and Steve Jobs actually stole a lot of their ideas. They came up with personal computers, Windows graphical user interfaces, word processing, laser printing, Ethernet. They even were involved in the development of the internet and made significant improvements and probably deserve half the credit. So they had all these ideas. They had fantastic innovation. Here we have a failure of execution and a failure of commercialization and protecting their ideas. So had the right strategy, didn't put the right resource into actually bringing it to the market. So that was Xerox. Look for PARC, that's the Palo Alto Research Center. It's still around, and they were responsible for developing all of these amazing innovations that we use every day, right until current times. Then another technological company, Nokia, and the famous quote from their CEO, "We did not do anything wrong." Correct, they didn't, but quite frankly, they didn't do anything right over the last decade with smartphones coming into the market. Here we had a failure to innovate, a failure to change, failure to understand what consumers were looking for, and they've been blown out of the industry. And they just weren't able to maintain their market share, and it was a dominant market share in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So here we have a failure to actually change and to innovate. So those are the case studies I wanted to chat about. I'm sure you are familiar with others. You may be involved in companies that either didn't run their strategic process or ran it suboptimally, or ran it well, but then didn't make the right choices. So I'm sure we all have some experience in there. The key point here is you have to run the process. Failure to plan is a plan for failure. That's the end of this module. The next module is when we really get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to look at the overview of the strategic planning process. So don't miss it. See you then.